For the purpose of this story, I'll refer to myself as Marcus. This started the way most gym friendships start. You see the same guy a lot. You nod at each other. After a while, you stop pretending you don't recognize them. You just say, "What's up?" Like it's no big thing. Story 1, the gym friend. I was going to my gym almost every day after work. Same time, same routine. It was the only part of my day that felt predictable and under my control. One of the regulars was a guy named Derek. He had that look like he wanted people to see him as a serious lifter, always in some kind of fitted tank top, always a shaker bottle, always walking around with that big gym bag covered in motivational patches. He was there so often it felt like he lived there. At first, it was just small stuff like a head nod when we passed the squat rack. Pretty normal. You see the same faces long enough and it starts to feel rude not to acknowledge them. Derek seemed friendly enough. He would smile and do that quick chin-up thing like we were already friends even though we really weren't. One day I was about to do bench and he was already on the bench in the next rack over. He looked over and asked if I could spot him. That's when it actually became something. I said, "Sure." I stood behind the bench while he unracked the bar. He was strong. I'll give him that. He did a few representatives and he struggled on the last one, so I helped guide it back. He sat up and then he started talking like he had been waiting for this moment. He asked me how long I'd been lifting, what my split was, some basic gym talk. I told him and he told me his. He talked fast and I could tell he was high energy. He asked where I was from, what I do for work, and if I lived close. I kept it basic. I didn't give him my address or anything, just the general area. He said he lived not far from me and he laughed like that was proof we were meant to be friends. Before I went back to my set, he asked if I had Instagram. He held out his phone pretty casually. So, I just followed him back. It didn't seem like a big deal. People exchange socials all the time now. It's like the modern version of swapping numbers. For the next couple of weeks, it was the same routine, but slightly different. If Derek was there, he would come over and say, "What's up, bro?" He'd ask what I was training. He'd comment on my form, like he was coaching me, even though I didn't ask. It wasn't offensive, just a little much. I figured he was just one of those guys who treated the gym like a social club. He would DM me gym memes sometimes, dumb stuff, videos of guys failing lifts or edits of bodybuilders with dramatic music. I just reacted with a laughing emoji and kept it moving. I didn't want to be rude. He seemed like he just wanted a gym friend. Then he messaged me one day saying there was a local car show happening that weekend and we should go. I didn't even know about it. I looked it up and it was one of those weekend events with food trucks, modified cars, vendors, and a crowd that's half car enthusiasts and half people just there to hang out. I hesitated, but I said sure. It sounded like something different to do. I figured it would be a quick hangout. If it was awkward, I could leave early. When the day came, I met him there in the afternoon. The first thing I noticed was how different he seemed outside the gym. At the gym, he had that focused energy. Outside, it was like he had no off switch. He was loud from the moment I saw him. He came up grinning way too hard, grabbed my shoulder, and started talking like we were reuniting after years apart. Then he started doing these weird impressions. He'd mimic people walking by, their voices, their mannerisms. At first, I laughed because it caught me off guard. It was so random that it was kind of funny, but then it kept going. We got food and walked around, and it was like being in public flipped something on in him. His jokes got more inappropriate. Not in a clever way, more in a shock value way. He'd point at random people and make comments that you should not say out loud, especially not around families. He kept trying to make me laugh by saying stuff that would get him confronted if the wrong person heard it. I found myself doing that tight smile thing, laughing a little bit, but also looking around to see if anyone heard. He didn't seem to care at all. He would look right at people while saying things like he wanted them to react. A couple times I told him to chill, like, "Bro, relax." And he would laugh it off and immediately do another impression, sometimes in this creepy whisper, saying my name like it was part of the joke. Marcus, in this fake, spooky tone. He did it more than once. It was weird how much he liked saying my name. Still, the car show was busy and loud, and I could tell myself it was just him being socially awkward and trying too hard. Some people have no filter once they get comfortable. I didn't want to judge him too harshly off one day. We ended up staying a couple hours. I went home thinking he was strange but probably harmless. After that, he kept messaging me more. He started sending DMs that were less like memes and more like constant check-ins, asking what I was doing, asking if I was going to the gym later, asking if I wanted to hang out again. At first, I answered, but then I slowed down. I'm not the type of person who wants to be texting all day with a guy I barely know. He asked me to go out to a sports bar one weekend and said he invited a couple guys from his work to meet us. That made it feel more normal, like, okay, we're just going out. There will be other people. It won't be just the two of us. So, I agreed. We met at the bar on a Saturday night. Derek showed up already buzzed. I could tell right away. He had that half-there look in his eyes and the extra confidence. We ordered drinks and about 15 minutes passed, then 30, and no one else showed up. I asked about the guys from his work and he said they couldn't make it. He said it like it was nothing, like it happened all the time. Meanwhile, he hyped this up like it was going to be a whole group. I felt like he lied about the other people just to get me there. That thought landed in my stomach and stayed there. Then the impression started again, even worse this time. He wasn't just mimicking random celebrities. He was doing these creepy exaggerated sounds like fake laughing, fake crying, then switching into a deep voice like a movie villain. He would incorporate these sounds into the conversation we were having, but it was still so weird. He kept doing it right at the bar while people around us were trying to have normal conversations. I saw a couple of people look over and exchange glances, not because it was funny, but because it was awkward, like they were watching someone make a fool of themselves. Derek seemed to notice and leaned into it. He got louder. He started telling stories that didn't even make sense, then laughing at himself too hard. Every time I tried to bring the conversation back to normal, he'd interrupt with another voice and then he started saying my name again. Marcus. Listen, Marcus. It was like he couldn't talk without anchoring every sentence to me. I felt embarrassed sitting there. Not because I cared what the strangers thought, although I did feel like he made me look bad by association, but because his energy was so off that it made me feel trapped. People were watching, and the bartender looked annoyed, like she thought he was causing a disturbance. Derek kept drinking. He ordered shots and tried to get me to do them. I said no and he acted like I was betraying him. He made a joke about me being boring. Then he did a voice like a whining child. I forced a laugh, but inside I wanted to get out of there so bad. I looked at my phone and made the decision I was leaving. I told him I had to get up early for work the next day. It was the first excuse that came to mind. Derek stared at me for a second like he didn't believe it. His face changed and he looked genuinely hurt, like I had just ruined his entire night. He asked why I couldn't just stay a little longer. I repeated that I had to go. He said something under his breath, then did that fake laugh again, but it sounded bitter this time. I stood up, said I'd see him at the gym, and left. He didn't even say bye. People looked at me as I left, and I knew it was because we'd been a spectacle in there because of him. On the drive home, I felt relief. It was like I had been holding my breath for 2 hours. I told myself that was it. I wasn't hanging out with him again. Gym acquaintances is one thing. This was something else. The next time I went to the gym, I saw him. I tried to avoid eye contact. I stayed on the other side of the gym, hoping he wouldn't notice. Of course, he did. He came up behind me while I was adjusting a bench and said, "What's up, bro?" like nothing happened. He was overly friendly again, like the bar night didn't exist. He asked why I left so early. I shrugged and said I really did have to work early. He asked if I was free this coming weekend. I kept my answers short. I told him I had a lot going on. He didn't take the hint. He stayed right there talking while I tried to move through my workout. He followed me from one station to another like he was glued to me. Every time I tried to end the conversation, he'd start a new one. It felt like he had decided I was his best friend now and he wasn't letting go. After that, I started changing my gym time. I'd go earlier in the morning or later at night just to avoid him. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And when I didn't see him, I felt better. But then I'd get messages. More than before. If I didn't open them, he'd send another. If I left him on read, he'd send messages like, "You good, bro? Or did I do something wrong?" I started not opening my Instagram DMs at all. I hated the feeling of seeing his name pop up. It was like a knot in my stomach every time. I thought that if I ignored him long enough, he'd get bored and move on. One night, I was in my apartment lying in bed trying to fall asleep. It was a hot summer night, and I had my bedroom window cracked open. My apartment is on the second floor, but there's a balcony that faces the parking lot. I heard something outside. It was a voice. Low and drawn out, like someone trying to sound creepy on purpose. It said my name. Marcus. It wasn't loud, but it was close enough that it felt like it was right below my window. I sat up in bed, listening hard. Then I heard it again. Marcus. Same tone. Same fake spooky voice. I got up and went to the window and looked through the blinds. I couldn't see anyone, but I felt someone's presence out there. I can't explain it. I grabbed my phone and went to Instagram. I messaged Derek. I asked if he was outside my apartment. I stared at the screen after I sent it, feeling stupid, but I needed to know. The messages showed read a few minutes later. That made it worse. He saw it and didn't answer right away. Then he replied with one word. No. That was it. No question about why I asked. No confusion. Just no. I didn't respond. I put my phone down and tried to forget it. The next day, he messaged me again asking why I was being weird and distant. I didn't answer. I didn't want a conversation. I didn't want to give him anything to latch onto. But 2 nights later, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't right below my window. It was in the parking lot, farther away, like someone standing near the dumpsters. It was the same intentionally creepy voice in the same fake tone. He said my name again, slow and stretched out. Marcus. Then it stopped abruptly. I got up and walked to the window fast and pulled the blinds aside and stared out. The parking lot looked empty. I grabbed my phone and messaged Derek again. This time I didn't ask. I told him if he was doing this and if he ever came back, I would call the police and get a restraining order. I blocked him right after sending it. I set my phone down and told myself that was the end. I had drawn a line. He would get scared off. That's what normal people do when they get threatened with police. But Derek wasn't normal. I lay there staring at the ceiling and I couldn't sleep. Even with a fan on, my ears were still searching for sounds outside. A part of me felt this awful curiosity, like if I didn't check the window again, I'd be caught off guard. I rolled over and carefully lifted the blinds just a little. Through the small gap, I saw a figure standing in the parking lot. A shadow outlined against the security light. Standing completely still. Looking up at my window. It was so still that it looked like a statue. I yelled loud right at the window, telling him to leave or I was calling the cops. The figure shifted and walked slowly toward the parking lot exit, disappearing around the corner of the building. I stood there shaking, listening for the sound of a car starting or something, but there was just silence. After that, I didn't feel safe in my own apartment anymore. Every sound outside made me think he was back. I stopped going to that gym completely. I didn't want him seeing my routine or knowing when I'd be gone from my apartment. I signed up at a different gym across town, even though it was more expensive and further from work. I stopped posting on Instagram for a while. I kept my blinds closed at night and I started checking my door locks obsessively. 2 weeks passed and nothing happened. So, I started to relax a little. Then, one morning, I walked out to my car and saw my front tire was flat. I crouched down and saw the valve stem had been removed completely. Someone had deliberately deflated it. I looked up and down the parking lot like I expected him to be standing there watching me. I didn't confront Derek. He was blocked anyway. I knew confronting him would only feed whatever this was. If he did this, it meant he was still watching me. It meant he wanted a reaction. I didn't want to give him one. I got the tire fixed and that same day, I contacted my apartment complex about adding security cameras to the parking lot. They said they'd consider it but couldn't promise anything. I bought a dash cam for my car and started parking in different spots every day. I kept a low profile after that. I didn't go out late. I varied my schedule, and I checked my surroundings constantly. The worst part about all this was knowing a guy I met in the most normal place, a guy I just tried to be friendly to, developed this disturbing obsession after hanging out twice. And once someone like that decides you're their person, good luck getting them out of your life. So, my advice is to be careful who you let into your life at all. Even in places that feel safe. Story 2, The Breakup. I'm Tyler. I'm 23 years old and I live in a small town in Nebraska. It's a safe town. I've lived here my whole life. I work at an auto parts store and I've been doing that for about 3 years. It's not a bad job. I go to the gym every day with my friend Brandon. He's 20. He's your typical country guy, drives a lifted truck, listens to country music, but he's chill and a solid friend. This happened last fall. Brandon had been dating a girl from the community college named Sierra. She was 18. They met at a house party and dated for about 5 months. Their relationship was toxic to say the least. They fought over small things constantly. She didn't even like him going to the gym with me. She wanted him with her all the time, texting her constantly, proving he wasn't with other girls. Eventually, Brandon found out she had been texting her ex the entire time they were together. Sending him pictures, telling him she missed him, the whole thing. That was the final straw. He broke up with her over the phone. She didn't take it well. One Thursday night, Brandon and I were at the gym like usual. We normally go around 7:30 p.m. because he gets off work at 7 o'clock. We were drinking our pre-workout and starting our session when the gym door opened and a girl walked in. She was wearing a black hoodie with the hood up and gray sweatpants. Right away, something was off. She just stood there for a second staring in our direction instead of heading to the locker room or picking a machine. Then she walked towards the women's locker room, but kept looking back at us as she walked. Brandon didn't really think much of it, but I did. A few minutes later, we heard noises coming from the women's locker room. It sounded like someone talking to themselves, but loud enough that we could hear it over the gym music. It wasn't normal talking. It sounded agitated, like someone having an argument with themselves. We tried to ignore it and kept working out. About 10 minutes later, she came out of the locker room wearing the exact same clothes. That's when it got stranger because if you go into the locker room, you're usually changing to work out, but she didn't. She just walked out and started moving around the gym without actually using any equipment. She kept drifting closer to us, like way too close, hovering near whatever machine we were on, watching us, not even pretending to work out. I told Brandon I was getting uncomfortable. We moved to a different area of the gym. A few minutes later, she followed. She stood maybe 10 feet away, just staring. Brandon finally looked directly at her and said, "Can we help you?" She didn't respond. She just pulled her hood down slightly and smiled. Not a friendly smile. A knowing smile. That's when Brandon's face went pale. "Holy shit," he whispered. "That's Sierra." I looked again. The hoodie had been covering most of her face, but now I could see it was definitely her. She'd dyed her hair darker and was wearing heavy makeup, but it was her. "What the fuck are you doing here?" Brandon asked, his voice loud enough that other people in the gym looked over. She didn't answer. She just kept smiling and staring at him. Brandon grabbed his stuff. "We're leaving," he said to me. We headed for the exit. Sierra followed us, not saying anything, just walking behind us at the same pace. When we got to the parking lot, Brandon got in his truck and I got in mine. Sierra stood under the light by the gym entrance, watching us leave. "That was fucking weird," Brandon texted me as we were driving away. I agreed. But we both convinced ourselves that was the end of it. She'd made her point, whatever it was, and now it was over. About an hour after I got home, Brandon called me. He sounded panicked. "Dude, she's at my house," he said. "She's sitting in her car in my driveway. She's just sitting there." "Did you call the cops?" I asked. "Not yet. I don't know if she's actually doing anything illegal. She's just sitting there." "That's weird as hell, man. You should call them." He said he would and hung up. 20 minutes later, he texted me saying she'd finally left. The cops had driven by and she took off before they could talk to her. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next night, Friday, I was home alone watching TV around 10 p.m. when I heard knocking on my front door. Not normal knocking. Aggressive, repeated knocking. I looked through the peephole and saw Sierra standing on my porch. My blood went cold. How did she know where I lived? I'd never given her my address. Brandon swore he'd never told her either. I didn't open the door. I just stood there watching her through the peephole. She knocked again, harder this time. Then she started yelling. "I know you're in there, Tyler. Open the door." How did she know my name? We'd never actually been introduced. We'd been in the same room at parties, but I'd never spoken to her directly. "Open the fucking door," she screamed, pounding on it now with both fists. I grabbed my phone and called Brandon. "Dude, Sierra is at my house. She's banging on my door." "What? Are you serious?" "Yes." "Call the cops." I could hear her trying the doorknob now, shaking it violently. Then she stopped. Everything went quiet. I looked through the peephole again. She was gone. I went to the window and carefully looked out. Her car was still in my driveway, but I couldn't see her anywhere. Then I heard it. The sound of my back door handle being tried. She'd gone around to the back of my house. I ran to the back door and made sure it was locked. Through the window, I could see her standing on my back porch, looking in. When she saw me, she smiled. The same creepy smile from the gym. Then she pulled out her phone and held it up. She took a picture of me through the window. "The cops are on their way." I yelled through the door. She didn't move. She just stood there staring at me. A minute later, I heard sirens in the distance. That's when she finally left. She walked casually back to her car like nothing was wrong and drove away. The cops arrived maybe 2 minutes after she left. I told them everything. They took my statement and said they'd go talk to her. Brandon called me right after. The cops had gone to her house. She'd admitted to being at my house but claimed she was just trying to talk to me about Brandon. They gave her a warning and told her to stay away from both of us. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. The next day, Saturday, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of my house taken from the street. No message. Just the photo. Then another text. A picture of Brandon's truck parked at the gym. Then another. A picture of me walking into work that morning. She was following us. Watching us. Taking pictures. I called the police again. They said they'd talk to her again, but unless she made a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of someone trying to open my bedroom window. My bedroom is on the first floor. I sat up in bed and saw the window screen being pushed from outside. Someone was trying to get in. I jumped out of bed and yelled, "I'm calling the cops." The noise stopped. I heard footsteps running away from my window. I called 911 immediately. They sent officers out. They searched my yard but didn't find anyone. The next morning, I found footprints in the dirt under my window. They checked the locks on all my windows. Brandon and I both filed restraining orders against Sierra that Monday. The court granted them immediately based on everything that had happened. Sierra violated the restraining order 3 days later by showing up at Brandon's work. She was arrested. At her court hearing, she was charged with stalking, criminal trespassing, and violating a restraining order. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail and 3 years probation. We found out later that she'd been tracking Brandon's location through an app she'd installed on his phone when they were dating. That's how she always knew where we were. It's been almost a year now. She's out of jail but still on probation. We haven't seen her since. But I still check my locks every night. And I still get nervous when I see someone in a black hoodie at the gym. Story 3, The Watcher. I'm 27 and I had been going to the same Planet Fitness in my town for about 2 years. I usually went after work around 6:30 in the evening. After a while, you start recognizing the regulars, even if you never talk to them. About 4 months ago, I started noticing a guy I hadn't seen before. The first time I really noticed him was during one of my back days. I was doing lat pull-downs and when I finished a set, I looked up at the mirror in front of me and saw him sitting on a leg press machine behind me. He wasn't using it. He was just sitting there with his hands on his knees, looking straight ahead. But when I started another set and looked up again, he was still sitting in the same position, now clearly staring in my direction. When our eyes met in the mirror, he quickly looked away. The next time I saw him was a few days later. I was doing cable flies and noticed him sitting on a rowing machine across the room. Again, he wasn't using it. The handle was just hanging there and he had been sitting there the entire time I was in that area. Every time I glanced over, I caught him looking at me before he turned his head away. After that, I started noticing him almost every time I went to the gym. The weirdest part was that I never actually saw him work out. He would just sit on machines or benches, but never move the weights. One night, I was doing hip thrusts when I noticed him standing near the water fountain. He was holding his phone up, and it was angled directly toward me. For a second, it looked like he was recording. The moment I stopped and stared at him, he lowered the phone and walked away quickly. That was when I started feeling genuinely uncomfortable. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept seeing him. Sometimes he'd be sitting near the free weights. Sometimes on a machine across the room. But no matter where I was in the gym, he always seemed to have a clear view of me. One night, I went to use the bathroom and when I came out, he was suddenly standing in the hallway only a few feet away. It startled me because I hadn't seen him follow me. He looked down the moment he realized I noticed him and he quietly walked past me without saying anything. After that, I decided to change my routine. Instead of going around 6:30 like I usually did, I started going around 8:30 at night. The gym is a lot quieter then, and I figured if he had a normal schedule, he probably wouldn't be there. The first night I tried it, I walked in and scanned the room right away. He wasn't there. The same thing happened the next few nights. I thought maybe I had solved the problem. Then one weekend, my friends and I went to a local brewery. It was packed like most places on a Friday night. I was standing with my friends near the bar when I turned around to order another drink. That's when I saw him. He was sitting alone at a small table near the back wall. It took me a second to realize it was the same guy from the gym. He was wearing a dark hoodie and a baseball cap pulled low. When I noticed him, he was staring directly at me. The second he realized I had seen him, he looked down at his beer. Over the next 30 minutes, I caught him looking at me several more times. Each time, he'd quickly look away. Eventually, I leaned toward my friends and said I wanted to leave. I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. We left and went to a different place across town. I didn't see him again that night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd followed me there. The scariest moment happened 3 weeks later. There's a park near my apartment with a paved trail I sometimes walk in the evenings. It's well lit and usually has other people around, so I always felt safe there. It was around 7 p.m. on a Wednesday when I started my walk. The sun was setting but there was still light. About 15 minutes into my walk, I noticed someone walking behind me. At first, it didn't seem unusual. Lots of people use the trail. But after a few minutes, I realized the distance between us wasn't changing at all. He stayed the exact same distance behind me the entire time. I sped up slightly, and within seconds, I heard his footsteps speed up too. I sped up again, almost to a jog now, and he matched my pace exactly. When I glanced back briefly, I saw a man in a dark hoodie with his head down. His build looked exactly like the guy from the gym. That's when real fear set in. I knew there was a parking lot exit up ahead. I started jogging faster toward it. His footsteps got faster behind me. I could hear him clearly now, no longer trying to be subtle. When I reached the parking lot, I started running full speed toward the main road. Behind me, I heard him break into a run too. I ran across the parking lot screaming, "Help! Someone help me!" A couple getting into their car looked over immediately. The second the guy behind me saw other people, he stopped running. I turned and saw him standing at the edge of the parking lot, about 50 feet away. He stood there for a moment, then turned and walked back toward the trail. The couple came over to check on me. The man asked if I knew who that was. I said I didn't, but he'd been following me. They offered to call the police. I said yes. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. I gave them a description of the guy and told them about all the times I'd seen him at the gym, at the brewery, and now here. They took my statement and said they'd increase patrols in the area. I never saw him at the gym again after that day. But I also cancelled my membership there. I joined a women-only gym across town instead. A few weeks later, one of the officers who'd taken my statement called me. They said they'd identified the guy based on my description and gym security footage. Turns out he had a history. He'd been arrested twice before for stalking different women. Both times at gyms. He was currently out on probation. The officer said they'd spoken to him and warned him to stay away from me, but that I should file for a restraining order just in case. I did. The court granted it. I haven't seen him since. But this experience definitely made me a whole lot more aware in public settings. I pay attention to who's around me, who's watching, who I see more than once. Because the scariest part about all of this is that I did everything right. I changed my schedule. I changed gyms eventually. I worked out in public places. And he still found ways to follow me.